Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to our Blade Runner. This is a spoiler chat. This is a spoiler
Very
chat.
spoilers. Lots of spoilers.
Absolutely lots and lots and lots of spoilers. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. Let me tell you something. I cannot effing stand the amount of spoilers in reviews. I was checking out Blade Runner reviews just to have a look. See, I like to see what other people said. Maybe I missed something. I didn't. I don't. And people are just talking about the first paragraph. Huge spoilers. Now, remember, everyone, spoilers, 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 starting now.
Yeah, seriously, spoilers. If you haven't seen Blade Runner 2049, don't stop. Just stop. And the first one, too, because we're going to, you have to talk about the first one if we're talking about 2049.
I got my spoiler glasses on.
Complete spoilers. So don't just.
It's starting now. First off, I didn't know Ryan. What?
I have a question to ask you.
Yeah, okay.
Just very simple. Just relax. Please try not to move. You're in a desert. You see a tortoise on its back.
What's a tortoise? I've never seen a tortoise.
Have you seen a turtle?
Yeah.
Same thing.
It's just like that.
It's not.
It's the 80s. We all smoke inside.
You want to hear about my mother? All right, that's a Blade Runner 1 quote. I was just... All right, but yeah, go, Matt. Get the Blade Runner. Run,
that guy's
Blader,
such
run.
a character actor. The shape of his face is just like...
Oh, yeah, the guy in the first scene.
When it goes from his nose into his neck cheek. Okay, this is what I was really pissed about, is that Gosling is a replicant.
Very obvious from like the first scene on.
Well, yeah, like that's not supposed to be a surprise. But they didn't show that in the trailer. If anything, in the trailers, I thought, oh, Harrison Ford's totally replicant.
Yeah, I got no kind of inkling that Ryan Gosling would be a replicant, or that they would tell us right at the beginning of the movie. Like, I did not understand. I didn't think they did a good job not showing their hand in the trailer.
And I love not knowing that, because it just immediately pushes you off your foot. And like the few spoilers, I'm just gonna call them spoilers. They call them reviews. The few ones that I read, that they talk about that right away. Like, what are you doing?
I can understand, I guess, if you think it's subjectively like you want to tell your audience, but I think the first review I saw, and I immediately told Matt, was Chris Stuckman. He's a guy who lives around the area, very popular
he's
on
great.
YouTube. And he said that when he went to his screening, they had a personalized note from the director that said, "Hey, please leave out specific things." And he did that, and he was very nice about it. He had a glowing review. So then when I wrote my review and Matt wrote his, we're just like, just won't spoil things. But I don't know why people. I think the reason that it tilts Matt and me too so much is because Blade Runner 2049 is nothing without its mystery. Well, that's
Absolutely.
a lie. It's very many things, but the mystery is what keeps you going through the 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And if you go in with an expectation or you know things, you're going to be making your own expectations about the movies, assumptions of what it is. If you go in with almost zero idea, or maybe you saw one trailer, the mystery is really fucking good. It's really good.
It is, and it's like as it goes on throughout. I didn't realize until once he saw the numbers on the tree, and he was so freaked out. I knew, okay, that had to be something to do with him, and it had to be something with his memories. But then the way they turn that around, that it's not him, is so beautiful. And when when that woman at the end tells him, like, "Oh, you thought it was you. We all wish it was us."
Yeah. Let's go like kind of down the line here. I really want you guys, even if you're watching and you're getting some of this stuff spoiled for you, but you haven't seen the movie, I still strongly urge you go see it in theaters, because the cinematography, like this, it's gotta win an Oscar. It's gotta. The cinematography is amazing, right? You agree?
Definitely. Almost every scene is. I think if you don't even really like sci-fi, or if you don't care about Blade Runners, it doesn't matter. Like, this is just a very. It's like Ghost in the Shell. I don't think. The
you don't have to like animate
one
to think it looks good,
And the Scarlett Johansson one as well is not a great movie. It's a really fun movie. It's a good movie. It's not a great film. It doesn't nowhere does it reach the heights of the anime, and the scenes that it rips off are so hollow in comparison. But that's a really fun movie to look at, visually stunning. Same thing with this one.
So much from Blade Runner, Ghost in the Shell does. But that's the thing. I think that Blade Runner does kind of what Ghost in the Shell did. Well, but all of them do the same thing, is that they make their worlds, however weirdly futuristic, very believable. And I think Blade Runner, the first and especially the second, we talked about this a little bit, that the second movie specifically, Blade Runner 2049, they don't give you a whole lot of explanation. They give you more explanation in like kind of ending stuff than the original film did you. But as far as like understanding the world, they just drop you in. One of my favorite scene is this kind of test that Ryan Gosling, he plays K. You know, his name is K because he is a replicant. This is something that you find out in the first fucking scene. And when they come back from traumatic experiences, they have to do these baseline tests to check their emotional level.
Here's
and
one.
Essentially,
what do you put in the toaster? Bread.
Yeah.
That's
what it's like. It's a stark white wall with like a little kind of like a webcam sort of thing. And there's just this booming voice who's yelling these kind of like statements at Ryan Gosling, and he's just repeating the like certain words back and forth. And you have no context of what's going on, but they put it to the screen so well, and they invest in that kind of idea so well that you buy into it, and it creates this tangible world. And I think one of the most impressive things about Blade Runner 2049, besides its visuals, is those kind of cool technologies. You know, like the newspaper reading system when he's looking through the DNA and stuff. It's like just a futuristic version of that, because essentially what this is a futuristic version of what Ridley Scott thought the 80s, what the future is going to look like in the 80s. Which it's just super cool to look at all the little working parts.
But it also makes sense because of they mentioned this great wipe, or the great blackout, where everything that was stored on drives and in the cloud is all gone. So they've had to go back and sort of redo a lot of the stuff. So you see a real sort of a lot of physical items are a lot more important. Things are sort of made out of junk. So I think that theory builds in perfect. Not only is it extremely believable, and even in just our day-to-day society, where like we're getting so close to that. You're talking to AI all the time, like on your phone. We have Google is
the whole joy mechanic, the whole joy plot point.
Sure.
I think that echoed what you're saying. It's very relevant. You know, Ryan Gosling's character spends so much time with this very human thing that is essentially just, you know, a memory stick. And it's a complete allegory for, I felt like some of the story itself was, you can agree with me, Matt, that this movie's like maybe 10, 20 minutes too long, in my opinion. Not too long. Like you can sit through it. It's not like, oh my God, this was terrible. Like it's just
not The Revenant.
It could be trimmed. And I think a lot of that stuff might be in the joy parts. I feel like we're getting way ahead of ourselves. Let's just real quick. So Blade Runner 1 is about replicants and humans. It's a futuristic society where replicants they look exactly like humans. They're just like a little bit dumber, kind of, and they can't feel emotions.
Yeah.
And that's the whole first movie. The second movie, Blade Runner 2049, takes place 30 years later. In the original Blade Runners, all replicants are bad. All of them get killed. Like, all of them are bad. And that's what a Blade Runner does. He goes and kills replicants. In the new movie, they're okay now because the company that made the original replicants is, you know, they're gone. There's been this whole thing called the blackout that Matt talked about. And now replicants, you know, some of them work around you. They're integrated into society. So
they were essential to bring humanity back from starvation. They ran out of food, and without replicants being properly tamed and controlled by the new Tyrell, by Jared Leto's character and his company, then humanity would have like probably ceased to exist.
So they come back from this. Replicants are good again. They saved us. They reintegrate them back into society. And Blade Runner 2049 just kind of goes right into it. And, you know, you have Kay, Ryan Gosling's character. He's investigating this. David Bautista, his name is Sapper, I think.
Yeah,
he's another guy. They assume he's a replicant. You know, they do some I can't talk today. Investigation after he dispatches the replicant. And like Matt said, he finds this date on a tree. They find a box of bones buried under the tree. And they come to find that it was the body of a replicant that actually ended up being pregnant.
Yeah, the miracle.
Well, and the problem is I kind of want to, you know, give you guys a base understanding, but here's where all of the theories start to split. And Blade Runner 2049 is very much like Blade Runner in the fact that they give you a lot of pieces, but they don't give you like a final answer. You have to figure it out for yourself. And much of the movie isn't just explained for you, so you're drawing context for things that you don't fully understand in the first place. This movie's so long. There's so much stuff in it. But essentially, Ryan Gosling goes and he follows this path, and do you want to take like that middle part? Because I feel like I'm going to forget something. Just like a small summary of where it goes. Because eventually we're going to start talking about theories here. And if you don't know who like Jared Leto is, like who his character kind of is, it's going to be, you know, it's not going to make any sense to you guys watching.
Well, I mean, I assume most people that are tuning in for a spoiler cast are going to know the synopsis of it, but True story. The middle part is that, it kind of all jumbles together because there's so much going on. One of the things I really appreciate about this one is that, as opposed to the original, is that the actual being a detective portion of
good.
it is very good. He uses his brains. There's a nice trail of clues to follow. It's not too convoluted. It does keep a constant air of mystery throughout. That's its biggest thing, and it keeps you on your toes. And that part I really like. I don't remember him doing too much in the way of. I mean, there's that one scene.
It's a lot of pieces. It's a lot of like, go here, talk to this person. The first movie, the original Blade Runner, was a lot of talk to this person, talk to this person, talk to this person, kill a replicant.
Yeah.
And the new Blade Runner is more like, here's a piece of puzzle that takes you to this merchant, and then you have to go talk to this replicant sex worker, and then, you fly to this cool planet and talk to this person or investigate. So instead of just dialogue, there's things happening. And like we said, this movie's almost 3 hours long. So there's so much going on. But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, the end of it all relies on the fact that Ryan Gosling thinks that he is the son of Harrison Ford, that he is the first replicant to be born. Mm-hmm. It turns out that he has a memory implanted that makes him think that. It turns out that it's actually a character he meets earlier on in the film who actually makes the memories, which is interesting.
And that's one of the most powerful points of the movie for me was when he's investigating that orphanage, following the trail of clues, and then he realizes, like, this is from his memory that he's always thought was an implant, and then following that thing, you know what he's going to discover, and you're right there with him, feeling the same thing, like, what's in that box? What's in the box?
Well, and they do a really good job tying the overall narrative, like the main mystery of the film. They do a really good job tying it to Kay and all of the characters. Yeah. So at both times you get character development and a really good story. You don't have to like switch over to the subplot over here. You know, there is kind of a few things like that, but Blade Runner makes a very cohesive story with a lot of branches kind of going on.
They are bouncing a lot of balls in the air. I mean, the whole Joy plot is just, I think that's, you'd like to see some of that trimmed. I liked every moment with her because I think that arc was completed where at first it feels like he knows she's fake, and then you realize that he really does care about her. She seems to really care about him. They're going on this adventure. It gives him somebody to kind of bounce off of and somebody to care about, somebody for them to take away from him. And also what I like about it is it poses the question of, I mean, if AIs are caring about each other, and she seems to really care, like especially when he buys her that present so she can finally be outside for the first time, and that seems like she's having a genuine reaction to this rain, but then she's interrupted by the call that's coming in, and he's reminded that she is a computer, and then after he loses her at the very end, there's this giant version of her that's like an advertisement, calls him Joe, which is the name that she gave, his version of her gave to him, and he realizes at the moment maybe that entire thing was just a lie. So it's like playing around with so many different levels of like what is real in so many different aspects. And in the future, humanity might be completely replaced by AI or some kind of, when we merge with AI.
Well, that's one of the bigger questions, is whether or not Joy became sentient. And we're just gonna get into some
like what is sentience? I mean, it's just and if an AI and an AI are interacting, I mean, like, what is the meaning of anything, basically, is what it comes down to. It's like, does life even matter?
The baseline question that people, the whole entire series asks, what defines consciousness? What defines having a soul? Yeah. Is it being born, or is it being from some kind of organic thing? Because this is what the headway is that eventually in Blade Runner 2049, they find out that either through evolution, life's willingness to give, or it was planned. Yeah, or there's a theory that they were originally planned to be able to give birth, kind of. But the idea is that eventually these replicants, these machines that were created by humans, can now give birth to new machines, via the process of intercourse. So it's like, if that thing can give birth, and it's just like you or I, just a tiny bit smaller on the emotional spectrum, like what makes that not a human? What is a human anyways? But I want to get into some like back and forth theories, because I think there's a lot of little things in this movie, or not little things, but specific characters, points that can go one of two ways. Mm-hmm. So let's start off with
you were asking about Jared Leto.
Yeah, Jared Leto. So Jared Leto plays Wallace. What's his first name? I don't remember.
Doesn't matter.
They have weird names in this movie.
He plays the man.
So he plays the new like leader of the people making the replicants, you know, and he kind of wears this like he's kind of has like an Asian influence on him. He has like wears this gi kind of sometimes. He has obviously has these like blind eyes. Apparently during production, Jared Leto just did an interview, and I guess when he put on those contact lenses, they made him blind. So him not having his eyes was a big thing for me. And
I didn't even clue in that he was blind. I thought that they just let him also look through the camera so he could see more.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that's what I was going to say, is because, you know, he has this little implant that gets put on his neck, and then you see these little pods fly in, and those serve as his eyes. But what I thought is, I was like, okay, why is he blind? Because, you know, like Blade Runner just makes you ask the questions. They don't tell you, oh, he stabbed his eye with a pencil or some stuff. You know, he's blind.
Midichlorians.
And the one way that they identify replicants in this world is either through records or by looking at their eye, because they have a serial number there, right? Now, Jared Leto's character, his whole company rose after all of those records of who the replicants were got wiped.
Right.
And if he wanted to, let's see, because in the film, he wants to create an army. He says, we don't need, you know, however many replicants we can make. We need ones that can be birthed. We need 1,000,000 trillion replicants. All right. His motivation for that is kind of beyond just like, I want to rule the world.
Oh, he wants space travel and to explore the galaxy.
He can do all the things. That's cute too. But with him not having his eyes, I was back to the question of, isn't he's a replicant, right? Because as far as who would more want to see the world filled with replicants and then pushed forward, a replicant who is has nothing to lose, you know,
or
has
a liberal.
Or some just weird dude, you know, with blind, you know, he just happens to be blind, right? This guy came out of nowhere with tons of money, bought out Tyrell, seemingly single-handedly. It would take, you would think, a machine kind of to do that. And when you combine
but Tyrell could have been basically bankrupt after all of his replicants end up stealing shuttles and murdering people. Like
you have to have some hands in the pocket to manufacture people, I guess.
Yeah.
So you have, like I said, they don't give a lot of context. They don't tell you this guy's whole life story. He just pops up and it's Jared Leto with, you know, blind eyes. So you kind of have to infer your own things.
Which is the interesting part of it. I mean, that's what I love about sci-fi, is that it's all about the questions, and they ask you questions that are, and using elements that are not even human to make you question what it is to be human. It's a lot like what South Park does. They use stupid potty humor to make you challenge and think about things in a really intelligent way.
There's going back to the Joy thing. There is big spoiler once again. So Joy, her death, if you want to call it that, it happens towards the the endish middle of the movie. This is around the same time that Ryan Gosling is talking to Deckard. Yeah. So what happens is, like Matt said, she has this little pod thing that Ryan Gosling buys, and essentially
looks like a big vibrator.
He can carry her around. You know, before she was locked into his apartment, she was just a hologram. He buys a little upgrade. Now he can carry her around. But if that thing gets destroyed, she is gone forever.
Be cool, because she wiped it she sacrificed the stability of being on the home drive because she knew that they could have looked at the records and tracked him down, even though there's like still a tracking device on it anyway, and on him.
At this point in the film, he's like a fugitive of the law. You know, he's going beyond what they told him to, trying to find out his own answers. Because at this point, like we said, he thinks that he is a replicant. Neo. Yeah, he's the one. And his boss has told him his whole entire objective in terms of police work is to find the child that was born from replicants and murder it. Because the second that the world understands that, replicants can give birth too, that's when the whole line of humanity gets shattered, et cetera, et cetera. So he's having to deal with the fact of like, I've been told to kill the child and I might be that child. Yeah. And to find out the answers he needs, he has to go places he's not supposed to. So Joy says, okay, you can just put me on the disc because they might find you if I'm here. And during this blast kind of thing, the little vibrator thing gets kind of left on the ground. And right before she knocks out Ryan Gosling's character, who's her face? I don't know. She has big bangs, right?
Yeah, she's like Leto's Darth Vader.
She says,
his right-hand woman.
She says, I hope you enjoyed our product, right? Yeah. And I originally thought that she was saying that to Ryan Gosling, but I think it's way more badass if she says it to Joy, which is what I think. Because technically Ryan Gosling is also replicant. Like, they are both AIs made by that company, by the Wallace Company. And like Matt said, like, they're two AIs interacting with each other. So what makes one more human, Yeah. Like telling the AI Joy, hey, I hope you enjoyed our product, referring to the man that she says I love you to right before she gets stomped out of existence. Like, and then that goes to the question later of, was the AI that is Joy so affected that she evolved into calling, being able to recognize Ryan Gosling in another place as Joe? Or is that just a joke? And that's like, so many big questions.
But see, the interesting thing about that is that Joy is programmed to say everything you want to hear. And if you look at basically every line of dialogue, it's all positive. It's all just, you're special. You are always special.
She never says anything negative.
I love you. I want to come with you. I'll sacrifice myself.
The only thing she says that's negative is to the who's her face, Love or whatever, the girl, the other replicant, the prostitute replicant. At one point they
when they're finished and she goes, you can leave now, I don't need you anymore.
Yeah, at one point, because Ryan Gosling's girlfriend Joy is actually like a hologram, she's not a tangible thing to touch. They hire this sex worker you see from earlier to kind of like, they combine themselves. It's more like she just kind of stands where the other girl is standing, and then there's like this weird threesome kind of thing going on. It sounds weirder than if you watch it, because it makes a lot more sense.
It's more like Spike Jonze Her, when Scarlett Johansson's voice hires that prostitute body just to be her vessel for it. I wish that it would have synced up a little bit better. It always seemed like the syncing was so far off all the time. I liked it when it would kind of blend and show both their faces.
Well, because they both kind of look very similar. Once they separate, you kind of look. You're like, oh,
I don't think so.
Well, the face, like their facial structure.
Yeah, I don't think so at all. I think the human prostitute was like, let's find somebody who looks exactly as much like Daryl Hannah as possible.
Really?
Oh yeah, they wanted that like more masculine, strong features, and they even had her hair kind of looking wet like Priss's was in the original.
Yeah. I just think the faces aligned very well, except for when they did this. They did like the intentional kind of, because you're seeing a person with essentially a giant hologram moving in and out of them. So it's like this face kind of morph. I think that when their faces aligned, it was very hard to tell which was which, but you could definitely tell from the body because, the hologram's wearing like some kind of kigurumi or something. Kigurumi? No, not kigurumi. What do you call the traditional Oriental dresses? They're very colorful. And the other one's wearing like 90s like neon street clothes. Really weird. That seems really good. Here's a bigger question, Matt. Do you think that every replicant, because Ryan Gosling eventually finds his way through this whole mystery by following his memories, thinking that they're real. And we eventually find out that they're implanted. There's two ways that this can go. Either Ryan Gosling was the twin and he's actually alive, so he was implanted with that memory to find eventually his sister, who can give birth to the other replicants, or every replicant has that memory and one of them was eventually going to find it, and that was just the whole thing. I feel like the fact that Ryan Gosling is like, the other twin would make more sense in the whole grand scheme of things. I find it hard to believe that just one guy happened to stumble across that tree.
Well, a lot of it is very coincidental.
That's what I mean, but it's because it can be both ways.
Yeah.
Because they're also earlier in the film, Jared Leto tells Harrison Ford's character, Deckard, that in the original movie, the woman he falls in love with, who is a replicant, was programmed to do that. So we don't know if he's telling the truth or not.
Right.
And that can go either way, because if Harrison Ford was originally, if Rachel was programmed to have sex with Harrison Ford, and she was programmed to be able to give birth, that makes this a huger conspiracy, because then there's the possibility that Wallace existed before Tyrell, or existed in the same time as Tyrell from the first one.
He could have been Tyrell's son.
And then Tyrell just put all of his ideas into a replicant, because he could make better replicants who have, Rachel didn't have a 4-year lifespan, I don't think, right?
I don't think
she had a longer one.
Yeah,
he had the ability to make replicants that didn't have the 4-year lifespan that all the other ones did. So if he had that technology in the world of the first movie, what's to say he didn't create a replicant, like you said, a replicant like Jared Leto, who is his son or his protege, and then when everything goes to shit and everything gets wiped out, there is no record of him. He can rise up. And if this whole thing was a plan to make a pregnant replicant and overtake the whole entire world with replicants, that's the perfect plan. To make a twin, but that's like you said, there's so many things that would have to happen. But in Blade Runner, it's all very possible.
Yeah, and that's the point. And like you said, it can be open-ended, and you can just have fun sort of thinking about it. It doesn't need to totally line up. You don't need to explain everything. It's like the Force in Star Wars. It's better when it's just sort of a vague idea and not just explained as midichlorians. One of the things, if we just kind of go back to like the plot of it, that I thought were some of the flaws in it were that this movie hinges on a couple movie rules of, bad guys won't kill the good guy. Yeah. Like Ryan Gosling gets left for dead, I think twice in this movie. And it just totally, and I think the same thing happened to Harrison Ford when I was watching the original Blade Runner last night. And it's like, just kill him. And there's no reason for you not to. They just leave him, and then they go, ha, walk away. He won't bother us again. Like after they take Harrison Ford from his Las Vegas place, they just leave Gosling. Like they should have just put a couple bullets in his head. Wouldn't have been a problem.
True. I mean, yeah, they could just kill Gosling. But then again, why would they kill Gosling if he was the one that was supposed to find the, like that makes sense though. Because
you think they want to keep him alive because they didn't actually find the child that they only found Harrison Ford.
Well, if you're following the idea that I said, where there was a boy and a girl, the girl is the one who is eventually found at the end, and the boy was Ryan Gosling. If they just implanted Ryan Gosling, with the memory, they need him to eventually find his sister.
Right.
And if this was all like a giant conspiracy from the Tyrells or the Wallaces all the way back, then they would need to keep him alive because only he has that. And the ultimate thing is to find a female version. So why wouldn't they take him with him then?
So that's where it doesn't make any sense. They shouldn't have left him. They would have either taken him with them and then cracked his head open and taken a look, or I don't know if you can torture a replicant. But
well, I mean, they can look inside your brain, but they can't see your memories, right? They can't see a replicant's memories. Because I know that replicants, or I know that Blade Runners can look inside someone's head, because Ryan Gosling says, "Oh, if you don't tell me, I can just shoot you and then look inside."
Right. I love when Gosling is starting to banter with Deckard, and then Deckard starts kind of messing around, and he goes, "I didn't take you for a bullshitter."
Yeah, they have really good chemistry together on screen.
It's fantastic, and it's played out so well where it's like serious, and then Gosling is on the defensive, and then they're neutral, and then he starts pushing, and then Deckard starts kind of dancing around because he doesn't want to address it. One of the things I didn't need to see Deckard see his daughter at all.
Yeah, I could have done with the whole entire last scene. I could have just ended with Ryan Gosling laying on the steps bleeding. I could have done that. That would have been fine.
Yeah, that's all you really needed. He was done. He sacrificed, and we're going to move on and go away from it.
So you think he's dead? Ryan Gosling, dead for sure? Because that's the end of the movie is Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford going to the location of that aforementioned girl. She's a woman now, and he says, "Why did you do this?" Because at no point does Ryan Gosling tell Harrison Ford's character, "Hey, I thought you were my dad this entire time, and I've been searching for my humanity only to find out that I don't have any." Yeah. He just says, Harrison Ford says one line, he says, "What am I to you?" And he says, "It doesn't matter. Go see your daughter." And then he kind of lays on the steps and dies.
And he says it in a very like absentee dad kind of way. It's more like a, "What am I to you? Why do you care?"
Because I don't think Harrison Ford makes that connection, or Deckard doesn't make that connection.
Or he just doesn't even want to be, he doesn't want to be close. He spent his whole life kind of cutting himself off from
that. The whole point was to be away, Yeah. Like that was the whole idea.
I didn't quite like that line when he goes, "Sometimes for the people you love, you gotta not be there." It's like, oh, that's not the second half I thought it was going to be.
The only thing, you really gotta leave him out to dry. The thing that I found the most interesting was the first time, and this is why I think that the whole entire, like, it was all a conspiracy and Ryan Gosling's the only one with the memory, because if you go back, I forget the character's name. You watched the original one last night. Who is the guy who makes the origami, the white unicorn origami for Harrison Ford?
Edward James Olmos. He's the captain of Battlestar Galactica.
The character. So he works with Tyrell, right?
Yeah.
He's like his right hand man.
No, he doesn't work for Tyrell. He works for he's a Blade Runner too.
Is he a Blade Runner?
Yeah, he's a Blade Runner because he works for the captain. He's the guy who comes in and is like, come with me. The captain wants to see it. Captain wants to see it.
Oh, that's right. Okay, because he's the first one. Before we see anything, this all kind of hinges, the whole entire mystery, it hinges about Ryan Gosling thinks that he has this memory of him being in an orphanage and hiding this little wooden horse that has these numbers written on the bottom of it.
Yeah.
But he knows, I'm a replicant, they're implanted. Eventually he goes there and he finds that, yes, this horse does exist. It's exactly where I hid it as a kid. It's exactly how I remember it. And that's when he starts to think, like, maybe my memories are real. Because the whole idea is that replicants didn't have a childhood. Before we see anything about we see the numbers, but before we see anything about the horse itself, the memory, any of that, we see that dude, and he makes an origami and places it on the table.
Yeah.
And it's a horse.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well, right. It's like a fat bull kind of thing, but I mean, it's a four-legged.
He's got old fat hands now.
It's a horse, and that's the first person we see. So that's like, all right, he has to know something, whether or not.
And he was the one. He made an origami of a unicorn and put that
for Harrison Ford
in Deckard's thing. As
yeah, exactly.
Maybe he knows that Deckard is a replicant. I never understood why. Just because in the final cut version where they
yes.
make sure that unicorn sequence is in there when Deckard falls asleep on the piano.
A little bit longer, yeah.
I don't get why that means he's a replicant. Just I guess, do all androids dream of unicorns? I mean,
the only thing is because
unicorns aren't real.
He dreams of the unicorn, and at that point we know that memories are implanted, and he tells nobody about his unicorn dream, but the dude gives him the origami, signifying that somebody else knows he had a dream about a unicorn. And since he didn't tell anybody, the only other explanation would be it was an implanted memory that somebody else knew about. So if they tried to make him a replicant and wanted to cover it up,
But then he ages. The reason I never thought Deckard was a replicant is that all replicants have a 4-year lifespan.
Yes, but some don't.
No, wait, maybe they don't. That's it, because
that's what I'm saying.
He was from a generation where they were not making them 4-year lifespans. And then they implemented that. They're like, 4-year lifespan.
Yeah, Nexus 6s have 4-year lifespans. The ones in the new Blade Runner 2049 are like Nexus 8s, and those just don't have. And then
Rachel didn't have the 4-year lifespan.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, at any point in the first movie, the guy who made the replicants could make a replicant that just lived forever.
That's right. Yeah.
So
and Deckard is not an emotional guy either.
No, and Deckard also his eyes light up like Rachel's in a few scenes too. So there's a lot of things in final. I think that's in.
Going back to watch the first one.
Final cut, it's not in there, I don't think.
When I watched the first one last night, I didn't realize he was such an alcoholic. He was so drunk in most of the movie.
Like 95% of the time.
Yeah, because I watched it when I was, like preteen or something, and I didn't really understand he was drinking and getting drunk.
You're just like, whatever.
That's why he loses control of his face all the time. When he gets choked, he turns into Nixon.
Shit, there was something else I wanted to talk about. 2049. What did you think about the action scenes? Because I think you said you didn't think they were the best, but I thought
leading for most of them were just fine. Like the first, the first action scene when he amazing. Has a Hell in the Cell match against Dave Bautista.
That was fantastic.
As soon as when Bautista threw him against the wall, I'm like, this is dumb. Why is he so strong? Because I'm a lot slower. You were instantly like, oh, he's a replicant. And I thought, that's dumb. Well, he shouldn't be able to survive that.
It wasn't the first hit. It was like after the third or fourth, his head is hitting the wall and it's exploded.
And then he still fights back. I thought, oh, this is...
Yeah. But that was, what I liked about that is it was realistic in the fact that there wasn't like a whole lot of punchy faces. Once he got Bautista on the ground, he threw like full-bodied elbows directly into his sternum, which is, the fastest way to fucking knock somebody out who's
It was efficient, like a robot would do.
Yeah, like it's like real life. I think the most action-y part of it, I don't like the ending action scene with the.
That's what it was. I think the climax of them having kind of an air car chase felt way too easy, way too convenient. If one of the richest people in the world is trying to get his Darth Vader to bring a very important person in this air car and do the big escape, and then it's so I just felt like it was way too easy for.
And we saw her earlier in the movie with like just little glasses doing aerial strikes on like anything she wanted. So why can't anybody else do that? Because Jared Leto can't see, so he can't do it. Like I find that hard to believe.
Or her be able to do it to defend herself in a way. And it's just, it felt like it was way too easy for Kay to catch up. They were trying to ramp up like, this is the climax. Here we go, climax. But I felt like the action was just really pale in comparison. only at the end. Like the action
Yeah.
scenes leading up to it, I thought were fantastic and they worked really well. I just felt like that part was a bit kind of like meh, and it didn't really have the same. I don't know. It didn't really have the same impact.
Well,
And then-
like I said, the aforementioned, like where they were dropping the aerial strikes on that like kind of garbage planet,
That was
looked
nice.
really, really good. The practical effects, I like what I like about Blade Runner is that it's violent, but they don't like really overdo it. The first movie I would say is more violent, but yeah, when those air strikes are dropping, like people are just losing limbs and stuff, but it's not like glorified. I think the movie's very gritty. What? The movie's loud. It's so
really
loud and it's
I
so
saw it in IMAX
good.
too. It was really loud.
Was it? Yeah. I mean, it not like Interstellar, like you can't hear people loud. In some parts actually.
Well, maybe
But-
McConaughey should have spoke up.
Right. But yeah, no, that movie is really good. I'd say the pacing is like a little bit, like it drags a teeny bit here and there.
If it just lost 20 minutes and cut out a few of the scenes that weren't necessary.
That's why I keep saying cut Joy, not because Joy wasn't interesting as a character, but I think in the grand scheme of things, when we're talking about things that aren't like massively cool looking. Like I don't want to cut anything with him going to the Harrison Ford area because of all the cool statues and all that.
And there was a nice lead up to it as well, because you're waiting the whole time to see
the traps. That scene where he clicks the one mine and it makes all of them go off. And it's like dead quiet. Like that's perfect. And I would need the whole scene. I just think a lot of Joy's stuff is indoors. There's elongated dialogue scenes where you cannot realistically drop 20 minutes from Joy and just have a movie, but you can drop maybe 5 minutes there and then maybe a minute earlier on, because he kind of does just
there is
the
a
distance
scene
quite a
right
bit.
when he first meets what's her name, Smiley McDreamer. When he first meets her,
Yes.
the Dream Maker.
Yes. Oh,
And-
yeah.
and
Her.
you're what?
She's like
And-
in the Westworld thing.
And you're doing this long sequence, and you're going like, man, they're hanging out with this character forever, and she is so positive. They really want me to like this person
Yes.
a lot. There's a scene right after where he's just kind of sitting on the steps outside, and it's this really redundant scene where they basically just restate a lot of the information. Like something like that could have been cut. There's not
Every
not
every
too much you
scene
can
where
do.
they go back to David Bautista's character Sapper going, "If only you witnessed a miracle."
Oh
I don't-
yeah, like all
they do
of
that
all the
3 times.
recaps. That I just saw that. That happened
Well,
half an hour ago.
The thing too is like they do that again later when they do the whole revelation, when Ryan Gosling realizes that it was the imagination girl doing or she was the one. Like they forecast that and then they show her at the end too. So
Yeah.
it's like, if I wasn't going to get it within the moment, I was going to get it at the end. So, but once again, these are like, we're talking about 20 minutes cut. These are like 10-second scenes,
It's true. 20 minutes is a long time to cut out of a movie.
And a lot of it, I feel like a lot of it, if you were to cut the most that isn't dialogue or isn't story centric, you'd lose a lot of those really cool vistas, a lot of those really cool things that build up the tension of the film, which is it's integral. I mean, it's just a 2-hour. I want to see the director's cut of this. That's what I want to see.
Really?
Probably like 3.5 hours.
When I was
imagine.
watching this, I thought, man, because of the detective mystery thread, this would have been a fantastic series.
Yes, that
But
too.
you would have lost a lot of the visual splendor because you wouldn't have had the same budget. You wouldn't have had
Unless you have a home theater, you really should see this in theaters because the spectacle of it, like you said, like you just lose that when you're going to the small screen. There's pros and cons of either making a movie or making a series.
like an
something
8 to 10 hour series, because then you really
like
could
The
have.
Dark Tower, which was also Warner Brothers, completely fell flat on its face because it's a 3-hour movie that's trying to do like 20 hours of content.
Yeah.
So something like that. I think Blade Runner sits right in the middle, where if they made Blade Runner into a series, I wouldn't want it to be an 8-hour thing, because at that point, if they're just trying to tell the Blade Runner 2049 story, they might give me too much information. Plus, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I forget who wrote the screenplay, but I think they only do film. So I don't know. The screenplay was really damn good.
It was.
In my opinion.
It was
really.
definitely a more enjoyable movie than the first one, I think, in terms of just being a fun movie to watch.
So I'm gonna give you this question: who's a better Blade Runner, Deckard or Kay?
Oh, who's better at their job?
No, well,
I mean,
no,
Kay's way
'cause then
better
there'd
at
be-
his job.
Well, Deckard killed more replicants.
That's true, but Deckard gives up so fast. Remember when he goes to the club, he asks the owner 2 questions. Where's the person? And they're like, get this guy a drink. He's like, okay.
Speaking of the club scene, that whole entire club scene with Deckard and Kay, when Kay is like, "Hey, I want to ask you questions," and Deckard still thinks, we're talking about Blade Runner 2049. He thinks like, "Oh, this guy's coming to kill him," and they go into this room where it's essentially like a nice lounge, and then there's a hologram stage where they play like, they play
Elvis.
Performances. Yeah, and so at first it's like a big band, and the movie is so loud that at certain points, the music, it's like glitching out, so it'll stop and it'll be completely silent, and all you see is these crazy lights as they're trying to figure out where each other are in the room, and then all of a sudden like Elvis will blare for like half a bar, and like that stuff was really, really well done. I think I guess that's my biggest thing about Blade Runner 2049 is like every single scene, regardless of if it's minute or something as big, like I just said, there's some sort of cool mechanism or cool technology, something imaginative that you can really look at and be like, wow, that's something cool to think about, but it's only on screen for 20 seconds to 2 or 3 minutes, Like
it was a really memorable duel. It kind of reminded me of De Niro and Pacino facing off at the end of Heat. They're the same kind of thing. They're in this place where it's all dark, and then there's these flashes of light.
I like the conclusion of it is when Ryan Gosling's character realizes that there's no way he's going to prove to Deckard without submitting, so he just lets him punch him like 7 times in the face.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, "Are you done?" Essentially. I mean, he doesn't say that, but they try to go at it, and then he just lets Deckard beat the crap out of his face, and then he's like, "Okay, do you understand now? Like, it's hello."
And then Deckard tries to kind of get out at like he's being the one who's giving up. He's like, "Hey, let's just go have a drink." I thought the Deckard part, they brought in a lot of comedy. There's all this like slapstick, like whiskey for a dog.
Like,
I got all this.
It's like every single time Harrison Ford comes back, I feel like this in Star Wars 2, but only a teeny bit. It feels like every time Harrison Ford's on screen, it's almost like he has to acknowledge the fact that he is like, "Yep, that's me." Like, it's me, Harrison Ford. Like in Star Wars, it was only to the effect of like, "Hey, Chewie, kind of like your bow," But he's the only one who's being like funny. But in 2049, everything else in the movie is so stark and so serious and so not funny. And then here you come Harrison Ford, and when he poured that whiskey on the floor, I was like, "That's kind of, you don't want to do that." Like that's a bad move. It wasn't funny to me as much as it was like, that's kind of messed up. But that's because it doesn't match the rest of the tone of the film. Yeah, he has some funny lines, but
I mean, he would be messed up because he's been alone forever with just a dog.
Yeah, and his systems are starting to fry.
Yeah. But you think replicants age then? That's what I always think. I'm like, well, as soon as they age, they're not a replicant.
Well, what are they going to do? Make some weird CGI bullshit for Harrison Ford when he's younger?
I thought they were going to CGI when they brought Rachel out to try to lure Harrison Ford, Deckard. When they tried to lure Deckard.
That was pretty close. I think that was an actress with some CGI done to the face, probably?
I thought it was just an actress.
No, I mean, it looks definitely close to... Well, they've done that. Like, they did that with...
I didn't think it looked close enough.
Star Wars Rogue One, they did that too. They did like somebody
they had
who's
CGI Tarkin, and then they had the CGI Leia.
I think the Blade Runner CGI was close enough, but yeah, like they don't look exactly the same. She looks like she's almost aged a little bit, in my opinion.
I thought she looked pretty, like she had definitely the same hair and the same lipstick and stuff, and that goes a long way. And like the stupid ~80s power suit.
And he's like, no, her eyes were green. And then they just shoot the replicant in the head. They shoot the Rachel in the head.
Yeah,
that movie's pretty in your face.
Yeah, it's very. Time. You know what I'm upset about is that it's they're reporting that it's not doing well financially,
which means it's good.
I guess so. It's just too bad. I think that it's an old property for the remake. A lot of '90s remakes have been doing really, really well. It did really, really well, and probably took a lot of its thunder as well.
I'm excited to see that director's cut for it. You haven't seen it yet, have you?
No.
Just hold out. Yeah, the director's cut is coming soon.
I'll watch the DC. But there's a lot of people I've talked to that just haven't seen Blade Runner, and they might even be the kind of people where you think, oh, for sure. They're editor of a video game magazine. They must have seen the original Blade Runner 7 times, all different versions. They probably saw the original proof film thing that came up before the theatrical release. But I think it's I mentioned this to you, it's like the Earthbound of games. It's the one everyone's heard about. They know it's inspirational, but not everyone's a lot of people haven't been able to stay awake. That movie will put you to sleep if you're
Here's the thing,
if you put it on at the time of night when it's fun to watch it, you'll fall asleep.
if you're around our age, like, late 20s, early 30s, I think Blade Runner came out early enough where our parents' generation probably saw it and knew that it was violent, or at least not for kids. And I think a lot of the movies that you remember seeing when you're growing up that are 90s or 80s that are our films are ones that you saw at a buddy's house, like Dazed and Confused. I saw that like at a family party up in somebody else's bedroom because they got a copy from like the other room. And, like, we're not supposed to be watching these movies. And I think when it comes down to Blade Runner, as a film, like, to a kid, a lot of it is super deep, super complex. You're only going to remember certain things. And those people who watched it as a kid, they remember it very well because it is a good movie back then. But for somebody who, grew up, like, I don't think every single person who grew up in the 90s or even the late 80s saw Blade Runner in the same way that, like, you could assume everybody saw Transformers or Power Rangers even. Like, I think Blade Runner was for sci-fi geeks and nerds because it was so well done, and sci-fi hadn't gotten mainstream enough that it's like you would more or less see Star Wars. Like, you can guarantee that someone's seen Star Wars, but maybe 5 out of 10 people have seen Blade Runner. It's just now everyone remembers it because they've done, like, when was that international or Final Cut was released in 2007? So they've had these releases that are staggered every few years.
And then they had the director's cut in 1992.
Yeah, so it's like every few years Blade Runner pops back up. People see it at different times. But yeah, I feel like people are, like you said, they're like, I didn't see the first one. Gotta understand it going in. Like, you don't. You really don't at all.
No, totally. We said this off air. All you gotta know is that Harrison Ford was a guy named Deckard. He killed replicants. He loved one called Rachel, and he left.
And that's
it. All. That's all you gotta
Everything
know.
else is explained, or as much as we do going in, I feel like here's a question. Would you prefer, people are going to watch this and then want to watch the first one if they haven't, out of context. Do you think that going back and watching the first one right after the second one, which is something you did, does it make it a little bit more confusing? Because I rewatched the first one right before I went and saw the second one.
Right.
And it was a little bit easier to parse out because it's like very much, here was the past, now we're in the future. But I don't know, something I thought of. Having the new one fresh in your mind going back, does the original Blade Runner touch on any things that are relevant to the new one? You've seen the movie twice. I've seen it once. I don't know if there's anything I missed out on, really.
The original movie?
No, the new one.
I haven't seen it twice yet. I'm going to go see it tomorrow.
Oh, I thought you said, okay.
But I watched 2049 Friday, and then I watched the original last night. And then I'm
going back, was there anything in the original that like kind of tied in that wasn't already?
I think it was really enjoyable to go back to the first one after seeing this one. I had enough of the first one in my memory to that every reveal, every callback, every little wink, I was like right on with.
Okay, because I had watched it like 2 days before, and as a kid I remembered like 3 scenes.
Yeah.
But this, I had everything, so it was much easier to.
Because I'd watched it as a, once I got old enough to remember, my mom, when we'd go to rent the movies, she would rent something like Legally Blonde, and then I would get to rent something for when she would go to bed.
Yeah,
and then as soon as I saw the cover for Blade Runner, just the name of it, and then it was in the future, I thought, oh, I absolutely want to watch this. This looks like the greatest thing ever. And it really was. Going back to it was interesting because I saw how many. There's a lot of like repeated scenes where they kind of pay tribute to a lot of the original scenes. Just like the little nods. Yeah, the
like
eyes thing.
Is super obvious. That's Ryan Gosling's eye, by the way.
And also meeting, going to an exotic sort of person who manufactures animals and asking questions in the marketplace. Yep. That's like sort of one for one in a lot of ways there. But I also wanted to see how would the original hold up. Like I remembered it being kind of clunky and a bit off, but it wasn't as bad. Like, cause you had watched it and you were telling me like, oh, you thought it was bad. No, dude, aged terribly.
Here's the thing about Blade Runner, and I'll say it once, and this is like I stick by it. Blade Runner is a fantastic movie because it influenced so much. It influenced all of science fiction. But going back in the year 2017, everything feels uninspired because you've seen it done so many times, and the dialogue doesn't hold up, and also you can't buy into the love because it's prefaced by a literal rape. Like it's not like I understand Rachel is a replicant, but in the love scene, Harrison Ford,
it's a bit odd that
he tries to like seduce her, and she tries to leave, and then he stops her, slams the door again, pushes her back, and then forces her to say that he
really
wants her.
shoves her up against. He like throws her back, and she smashes up against the wall.
He manhandles her and then forces her to say the words "you want me" until she is like, okay, now into it, and then he essentially, it's implied sex, but only after he forces himself upon her. So at that point, I'm like, wow, Harrison Ford's character is a dick and I don't like him. And then it's just more and more stuff, and then Roy's character and all that stuff it's decent. But at the end of the day, the mystery itself, if you don't like Deckard, it's, it's not like they do anything super crazy. Essentially, all the replicants just die and that's the end.
Well, that's the thing. Was Deckard...
The visuals look cool.
Was Deckard the key to making a baby with a replicant, or was he just like a horny cop, or is he a replicant that can make sperm? I mean, we see replicants bleed and they have eyes, so it's not out of the question that they would have ovaries and they would have a womb and they would be able to make cells.
Well, that's the ultimate question, is whether or not Rachel was intended and designed to be able to give birth, or if it was evolution, and that's all ties. But that only becomes a question when Blade Runner 2049 comes out. Before that, it's just Harrison Ford kills some machines and rapes another machine, and it looks good because Ridley Scott directed it. In the year 2017, going back in '82, everything was like, watching 2049 right now. Everything seems so cool because it's so inventive, and that's what the original Blade Runner was, using all of its technologies. But you go back and you watch it today, and you've seen so many different crazy things that those things seem tame. And okay, so they're not as effective. The visuals, especially on the final cut, are still really good.
They look great because there's so many practical effects with it.
Iconic.
Like the first 10 minutes of the movie are pretty mind-blowing what they're throwing out there.
They're fantastic. Yeah.
I mean, it's just like the shots through the city, you see a flying car. I think it all looks amazing.
Here's the thing: is Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner final cut is 1 hour and 45 minutes minus credits. So an hour 57. And then you take credits off of that. The new Blade Runner is 2 hours and 45 minutes. The original Blade Runner felt like double what the new one was in lengths of how long it felt.
It really does.
And that's the biggest thing. Is for a movie to drag when it's supposed to be interesting me, that makes it not successful in my opinion. At the end of the day, if it fulfills its message, it's still a decent story. But if I'm not entertained, I'm very much one of those, it's not the destination, it's the journey. If the destination works out, it makes up for a little bit of the journey. But if I'm bored the whole entire way there, I just watched, essentially 20 minutes of interesting content and then 1 hour and 30 of so-so.
I still really liked it, and I probably watch it, the original, again in maybe 6 months or a year or something. I like just looking at it.
That's what I'm saying. I would go back and I would watch it, but not in the kind of, I would turn it on at a party, which is the wrong way to watch that movie. But I think visually it looks very cool, but the dialogue is slow. The pacing's all over the place for me. And that's
you know what? I think, here's a hot take. I think that in a couple years, repeated viewings, I think that the Blade Runner 82 will hold up over 2017, because I think a lot of 2017 is built upon the mystery of it and the reveals. So how many times can you go through that? I think maybe one more time I'd watch it to kind of see what I missed, but I don't think I'd need to see it anymore after that.
I think Blade Runner 2049 has more potential opportunities as far as story goes than the first one does, but obviously without the first one, we wouldn't have the second one. I think that the second one expands the Blade Runner world in a better way, and I think there's more interesting questions to be asked. Mm-hmm. But as far as watching a movie, Blade Runner 1 is one that you have to watch 2 or 3 times to really understand, whereas 2049 is mainstream enough that, like we said, one viewing and you'll get the gist of it. It's only when you really sit down and you're like, oh, is this guy really a this or this or this? And not many people are going to have those kind of discussions with themselves for more than a minute,
But it becomes, it's almost like playing a sandbox game where if you're watching Blade Runner 2049 with the intention of, all right, in this version, I'm going to pretend that Jared Leto's a replicant, and then you just kind of apply that. And then, so that's, you're sort of watching, which is a really nice way to, to have a piece of art, and that it's going to affect people in different ways and let them apply their own inspirations to it. But it's just, I don't think I wouldn't be as excited to go back and watch it, because I think so much it is predicated on the surprise and the mystery of it. Whereas that shock is dwindled, where there isn't really much of a mystery in the first Blade Runner. It's more.
That's what I'm saying. When I'm thinking about it, as I think about it, if Blade Runner 2049 didn't have the mystery because it's already been spoiled for me or I've seen it, I would still watch it over Blade Runner 1 because I think it's a better looking movie. But then again, that's because it's 32 years later. I don't know. That's why I sit on Blade Runner 1 as it was influential, but it doesn't hold up today. Unlike Alien, so it's not even a dig on Ridley Scott or even like his style. It's just literally that specific story does not hold up because so many things after it have
There are a lot of cheesy elements. There's a lot of like strange 80-yard lines. Almost everything the police chief says sounds like they replaced the voice actor. It's odd.
There's some weird stuff to it. But yeah, I mean, I would say that Blade Runner 2049 is the best possible sequel. Yeah. It's a sequel better than anyone could have hoped for because no one wanted this one in the first place. So the fact that it came out and it was really good.
It did what you want a sequel to do. It took what made the first one interesting, expanded on that.
Built it, yeah.
But it did it in a new way. It did that with 2017 sensibilities.
It doesn't feel
all
like
you can ask for.
It doesn't feel like Blade Runner 2. It feels like Blade Runner
2017.
Exactly. Like it's not a reboot. It's in the same world, but it doesn't hinge its whole entire plot device on something from the past one. No. Even though it involves themes, it does a good job. I mean, it expands. It includes some things. It excludes some things. It's great. It's great. It's one of my favorite movies of the year. It is probably going to be my favorite movie of the year. And you know what? That's a shame because I would say that it is not as solid of a script and is not visually as impressive, nor is the soundtrack visually impressive, but it's more of a fun time, and that's what matters to me.
I was so excited when it came out of 2049. I'm like, I was writing my review and I was going to say best movie experience I've had all year, and then I thought, I was really hot after Dunkirk.
Hot. You were way hotter on Dunkirk, in my opinion.
Dunkirk was super, but see, Dunkirk felt like I went on a ride, whereas. I don't know if I could watch Dunkirk casually. I'd have to watch it with headphones or in a home theater system to really get the full effect. Like it's not
kind
just
of what Blade Runner's like. That's like kind of what Blade Runner's like is that you want to see it in the theater. You want to really feel the experience. But as a movie, like it for me is just more playful and more enjoyable. I really can't wait till you see that. But yeah, it's been a good year for both games and movies, dude. And something that's it's a sequel to a very popular franchise, and it just turns out to be such a complex and very intriguing narrative they've given us. It's unexpected. I will say that.
There you go.
I didn't think that this was going to be great, but it ended up being dope. So go see it if you haven't already.
This was our spoiler chat. You can leave us your theories in the comments in the video. What do you think?
Yeah. And does every replicant have that memory, or is it just Ryan Gosling? Is Jared Leto a replicant, or is he just a weird blind guy? Let us know.
See, then he would have to be part of the plan, or it was just a coincidence. But that's the fun part.
That's why he would be part of the plan, is because he was made to make the new era of replicants. He was it's completely changes the narrative. If Tyrell is part of it and he wants, like, his end goal is to get the kid. Essentially, Jared Leto's on the same team as Ryan Gosling. He just doesn't know it.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, to like quickly jump back, is when he meets the Matrix people that are all in leather jackets and they're like, we're the army of the rebels. It's so funny because they want to kill Harrison Ford.
Yes.
And they want to stop Jared Leto, but Jared Leto wants to make more replicants. And Jared Leto is like not a humanitarian, he's a replicantarian or whatever.
Jared Leto is the best choice, or is the best hope for replicants to get the kind of rights, but it's because he has that sort of power. It's the same reason that the girl who represents him can walk directly into the LAPD and shoot the main chief in the face, is because he is all powerful. He is the mecha Google. If his company single-handedly saved humanity, doesn't he hold all the power in the world? Especially, you see, like I said, his assistant walks right in and shoots the chief of police in the face, and she doesn't even get arrested. Like, she gets her stuff and she walks right out the door. So I feel like Jared Leto has all the cards, and he didn't just pop in and get those by chance.
Okay,
this movie's really interesting, right?
I know, you can go on forever. So yeah, leave some comments with the theories. You can see all of our other stuff at a90skid.com. News, reviews, and opinions. I'm on Twitter at GameThinkTalk. I'm going to be streaming some video games here Tuesday to Sunday, 9:30 a.m. And Matt, what do you got going on?
I'm on Twitter at SuperGamecast64 and also at SGC64 Matt. The Super Gamecast 64 is also the name of my podcast. You can find it on iTunes and like Google Play and Stitcher. It's like a comedy video game show. You'll like it, I guess, if you like podcasts.
There you go. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.